Hello, and welcome to Workplace Stories, the podcast where human capital experts share their real-world experiences and insights. Hosted by Red Thread Research, Workplace Stories surfaces the latest industry trends, innovative talent strategies, and best practices for success. Tune in for practical advice on how to best transform your workplace.
Welcome to Workplace Stories. I'm Stacia Garr, and today, Danny and I just finished a conversation with John Barrand, who is the CHRO of the state of Utah. We talked all about performance management. Even though John is in the public sector, in the state government of Utah, many of the challenges that he brought forth are similar to those that we see in the private sector. For instance, he talked about how there is a wealth of bureaucracy and challenges that could inhibit his performance management transformation. He also talked about how difficult it can be to get employees to change a cultural mindset around what performance management is to one that is really focused on communication. There are a few things that really jumped out at me about John's story. He began by telling us what it was like when he first came into the role in 2021. And remarkably, he said that over 70% of employees had an unknown rating, and that there were only 16% of the population who had even had an annual review. He felt like there was a real culture of silence around what was happening with performance. So one of the first things he did was he worked with the legislature to pass a bill that actually required a quarterly check-in conversation. And today, at least 89% of employees every year have at least 4 quarterly check-ins. So that increasing of communication was one of the first things that he did. The second thing that jumped out at me from this conversation with John was he said that people don't want feedback. They want connection. And we see that across all of our research, which is why this point particularly resonated with me. There are a couple of things that John and his team did to begin that focus on connection in addition to those quarterly performance conversations. One was that they actually asked employees for their feedback and thoughts on how they could improve their jobs. And as simple as that sounds, it was something that had not been done in the recent past. The second thing they did was they actually trained managers on how to be better managers. When John came in, about 30% of folks had any sort of management training, and today, at least 87% of folks have had management training. John also goes through a few other things that he did, particularly with regard to moving from a cost of living adjustment to more of a rewards and incentives program, which is important. And he's got a few other things he shares as well. But what I want to highlight, though, finally, is the results speak for themselves. So as a result of increased performance conversations and accountability, they had a 40% increase in exits for cause within the first year, meaning that they were able to have conversations about performance sooner while keeping their overall rate, their retention rate, equivalent. The other thing was that they see a 16% higher retention rate for their high-po employees than they do for the overall population. So they're much better at identifying the people that are critical to the organization's future and retaining them over time. So if you are in a situation where you are trying to figure out how do I change performance management, how do I get around some of these barriers that can really seem insurmountable, John's story is truly inspiring. I hope you enjoy listening. John, welcome to Workplace Stories. We are so excited to have you here today.
Thanks a ton for having me. You two are a shining bright light in the HR world, so it's always good to spend time with you.
Well, thank you. Aw. So we are talking about one of my absolute favorite topics today, which is performance management. And when we had first started talking about you coming on the show, we kicked around a whole bunch of ideas, and we landed here largely because I'm seeing a resurgence and focus on performance management more broadly. And it makes sense. It's a little bit cyclical. I've been focused on this topic since roughly 2010. And we sort of see kind of energy go, the early 2010s, I guess you would say, was the whole, abolish the performance review thing. And then we went into the pandemic thing and we don't know what we're doing and we're not going to touch it. And then great resignation. And so we're not going to touch it again. And now many people have used performance management to get rid of people's roles in the last few years. And now I think we're kind of coming at a point where it's like, okay, actually, we should probably think about this, particularly in a world of AI. All that preamble being said, we know that trust in performance management and sense of fairness of it are at historic lows. In the 16 years I've been doing research on this, I've never seen them this low, particularly around the fairness element. And so that is a big concern for us. And I know that for you, it was a big concern. And one of the reasons I wanted you to tell this story in particular, John, in addition to your sparkling personality, of course, is that you have done this performance management transformation with your team in a government sector. So you're the CHRO for the state of Utah, and government is notoriously hard to transform, and performance management especially. So with that intro, I would like you to start off by just telling us a bit about yourself, and we'll get into all the details.
Sure. Thanks again for having me. We'll certainly have a little bit of fun. I'm energized by great energy and great thought partners. So I think the first thing for me, I like to make sure people know I'm an aspiring CHRO. I'm only getting better. So make sure that that's a joke, but we've really landed on some curiosity here, what it means to keep learning. And you may not hear that a lot from government, but I think there's some tides that are turning. So I'm an aspiring CHRO. I've been doing this for 5 years. I was working in previously 2 private equity-backed organizations. So it was squeeze and sell. And then I got a call from a guy who happened to win the governorship for Utah. I was courting my now wife in the UK. And I was like, hey, man, I wasn't even in town for the election. And I probably wouldn't have voted for you had I been. And he was like, hey, team of rivals. And I was like, you are really desperate. He's been great. Governor Cox and I lived in Chicago for a decade previously. The great thing is I'm not asked to be political. I'm asked to be a practitioner. And it's been such a great learning place for me, coming from the private sector, jumping into this public sector service, which so many people oftentimes want to little brother you and pat you on the head. But we've got some stories that are brag-worthy and really compelling. And I kind of become a public sector HR advocate because of that pride or that resilience that I have. But I love living in Utah. I'm going on my 8th year now. My wife's British. We have 2 kids. We're in a really special time with a 3-year-old and 18-month-old. And public sector does offer likely a better work-life balance than those who might be prepping for board decks and impromptu CEO meetings the next day. Don't get me wrong, we have our weeks. I just came out of legislative session, but this is the right role for me, the right time in my life. And I couldn't be more engaged and more happy with the work that I'm doing, the life that I have. And I'm extremely blessed to be in a spot to talk with you two and to hopefully continue to find ways to get better. So those of you listening, I don't know if I'll say anything to help make you better, but can you message me and make me better? Because that's what I'm looking for.
It's a cry for help, a plea for help.
Go. Yeah.
So John, why should people listen to you on the topic of performance management?
Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of public sector slant, but I still think it all slaps the same. Like one of the things that happened for me in 2021, I joined this group, I joined this team, I joined this administration. I was completely unaware of the employer-employee relationship. At will. You may not have ever heard of career service or civil service protections. I honestly hadn't, which is either ignorance or innocence. I don't know. But I was thrust into this conversation about these career service protections, which, by the way, are legally tied to the 14th Amendment property rights. Like people have rights to their jobs. It was often divisive, quite polarizing, much like politics, and had been grossly perverted in understanding. So Governor Cox, probably day 3, I think it was day 3, it was like he had just got done being the lieutenant governor for 7 years in Utah. And he said, can you figure out a way to overhaul this employee-employer relationship, but do it deliberate and try to do it without political pressures, which is very interesting to hear from a new boss in my closest proximity to a politician. So we had to build backwards. And again, I'm giving a little bit of space to go with anywhere you want to go, but I believe it started with working with another senior leader, I would call the CFO for lack of a better term. We established the first year strategic plans for all business units. So KPIs, OKRs, started driving them out. So introducing strategic plans that could attach individual goals. Probably this sounds pretty boring or copy paste, right? It's a P&G playbook. It's a private equity playbook. Manager development. We had to go negotiate with our CFO, 104 legislative elected officials for incentive structures for funding. I was asking for $40 million the first year. But I think the main reason why you should listen to me is we had to figure out what our why was for performance management. I think there's a lot of reasons why people and organizations look for performance management. Some of them can be really scary. I found the why for us was government had lacked the ability to help employees learn and grow and to retain top talent. Now, those are typically like numbers 4 and 5 for a CEO, but for CHRO to say, hey, I want to help you solve your talent problem, and you can do it through performance management, kind of became my bedrock for the foundation. I'll pause there. There's the rest of the story. We've been doing this for 4 years. This all happened in 2021, but the reason why I think we're talking is because of what has played out the last 3 years. But that's the framework for what I inherited and where I wanted to go. You want to pause there for any commentary?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things I've said consistently in the performance management research I've done on all these years is that the most important thing you do is you establish your purpose for performance management. And, for some organizations, particularly as we look across the last few years, it has been, we want to assess people, we want to rank them, we want to pay them, we want to, develop them, we want to engage them, but all of those lead to different design decisions than, this just blanket, we do performance management for like 6 different reasons. And then we wonder why the system doesn't work because we couldn't actually have any clarity. So I love that you started this journey with what is our purpose? Like, what are we driving towards?
Yeah, it was a talent sustainability solution and a really massive gap, which likely exists in many sectors, not just public, but I got proven pretty sorely right that employees really wanted to learn and grow. However, the cynicism in government or the cynicism in the suit showing up was, you just wanted to fire people. You want performance management to whip accountability. And that was never a message that I delivered, whether I was standing behind a committee to testify, whether that was me and Governor, road showing in rural Utah. We never talked about employee accountability. We talked about making poor performers uncomfortable and retaining top performers. And the data that we'll share today and that I'm proud of has sustained that for 4 years. Pretty good.
Ooh, I'm kind of interested to get excited. I'm kind of excited to get into that. Before we get into it, you've explained a little bit as to why this might be different than it was in your previous roles or what other people face. But can you go a little bit deeper into specific challenges you face because you're public sector?
Yeah. Why the government is like uniquely hard to change. I think the word for me would be that the one word is adequacy. There's a standard of adequacy. Hard stop. We could stop there, but I'm also long-winded and it's fun to give this version of the story. Adequacy started in public sector after an assassination attempt in the 1860s that created something called the Pendleton Act in 1883 and then continued to civil service reform in 1974. So I just bored you with 100 years of bureaucracy to get to the point that the primary purpose wasn't to make employees great. It was to make them unfireable, right? For political reasons. Like if you think about it, legally adequate's the minimum standard of performance to keep you from getting fired. It creates a culture compliance. So I've often said I see adequacy as a defensive word. It's what you say when you're trying not to lose. And that's not really who I am. And also I was given permission to think that we in the public sector, we shouldn't be playing to lose. We should be playing to win. It's fun to be competitive. So of course, cliche, moving from adequacy to impactful. And then a quick comment to that, addition to that, I have an organization, 22,000 employees across 21 agencies, all the things that you need your state government to do. Think about those touch points, right? Hunting permits, driver's license, tax, public safety, corrections officers, workforce services, economic development. The thing that you likely have researched and you can quote to me is, public sector is so mission driven. That's our thing, right? We're supposed to be mission driven. Well, public sector employees show up to go change the world, to make it a better Utah, right? But we get them in the door and then we say, hey, be adequate. Like, come change the world, but just be adequate. It never trued up for me. We were stifling inspiration through bureaucracy. We were stifling aspiration through a compliance culture. The floor became the ceiling. I've found many organizations can't seem to get out of it. So I think if that resonates with anyone, if that's the culture you have, right? We have a framework. I've been working on it for 4 years. It's my number one feather in the hat for what I think we're proud of doing. But that's what you have in government is adequacy, compliance, comfortability, and sometimes just not signing up to do something because it's hard work. And I don't know. The thing I often hear is oh, then why don't we not do this? Because the next governor might not want to do it. And then I have to remind them, like, the average CEO lasts 3.97 years, according to what I understand. Guess what? That's 4 years. We get elected every 4. I mean, the private sector doesn't say, let's not do it because the next CEO might not like it. They go and they do it. So we hide behind the politics and bureaucracy and the turnover of what leadership could do, which I know can sway, of course, political party pretty aggressively, but I don't really like that excuse either.
Your framing of the ceiling I think it was the floor became the ceiling or the ceiling became the floor. Yeah. I think is interesting because it's, there is that element of we're using performance to set standards and expectations and the like, and that's a super important component. But it's also, performance management is also tied to fairness, trust, particularly public trust, sometimes even legislation. So talk to us a little bit about, with this big initiative, what could have gone wrong if the shift had failed?
Yeah, I appreciate that. This was one in the pre-questions you asked. I think the one I had to think about the most. I've already used the word, I was pretty ignorant. But I think there's two big ways. And I'll start with one, the employees themselves. So we as an HR team, I have a team of about 150. We made an internal decision heading into our budget season. We allocate our budget once a year. And again, I try to be really prescriptive in this because it's such a fascinating. Every year, the executive branch goes to the legislative branch with a recommendation for how to spend the money. We typically know what the money is. Our budget has gone from, since I've been here, about $30 billion to about $32 billion. So we have great growth. We're very stable in Utah. Economic development's on the rise. But we had to go and say, cool, for the last 30 years, everyone's been really comfortable getting a COLA. Can I trade in?
Yeah.
Is it laughable because you want that or because...
No. Carry on.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. Like a Coca-Cola, a butter coffee. I don't know where we're going.
Cost of living adjustment.
They're used to getting a cola. And I openly was negotiating for my 22,000 points saying, hey, I'd like to place a bet that performance management, I don't want any new money. Can I use the cola for performance management? And our employees didn't like that. They're like, excuse me, you just took my stability? You're going to trade that in for performance management? Now, we landed in an interesting place where I actually asked for more dollars. I was able to get a COLA and performance management, so I didn't have to fight against the resistance of not having COLA. But telling employees that who are comfortable, by the way, I don't fault them. That's what the system created, was like, hey, you're going to come in, you're going to get COLA every year. We're not going to evaluate performance. My anecdote is when I first started my first day, I asked my deputy, known as vice president of any organization, can I see the performance reviews for my 100, at the time, 30 employees? Said, oh, it won't do me any good. We're past fail. And for the last 13 years I've been in this role, we've only had 3 fails. I was like, oh, so we don't talk about it. Yeah, 16% of our employees have even had an annual review in the last year. We just don't do it. It's not a thing. It's not going to help you to evaluate what we've done. Oh, okay. So trading in COLAs, the employees could have openly resisted. And by the way, we had to run a bill. We can talk about that. 3,800 managers. We had to ask them to be the managers they were hired to be. And they could have shirked, by the way, just to make sure they get some credit. They could have shirked and said no, let's ruin this bill. Now, it was aggressive. It was venomous. It was divisive. But they showed up. And again, some of the data show that. The second, and I know I get long-winded, the cynicism of our CFO, the elected body, the legislature, they were pretty vocal. Our first year, the private sector guy showed up and was like, hey, can I get $40 million to run a performance management program? And they're like, if you turn this into an extended COLA, you won't be here next year. So they were very adamant. If you're going to show up and ask for $40 million, you better do the right thing. And of course, I could set up the system, but it was up to the managers to actually deliver. And to give you a smidge there, there is fairness in government. And the end of the first year, 88% of our employees had gotten some version of that $40 million. So I was like, I'm losing my job tomorrow. The data showed that in the first year, 88% of our employees had gotten some, and I had to go report back. Yeah, we kind of peanut butter spread it. 88% of our employees got money. Now, the variance told the story anywhere from a 0.5% one-time bonus to an 8% salary increase. And I was able to defend it. And then I was able to tell them, I know the next 2 to 3 years are going to be calibration heavy. I need to teach the organization how to calibrate. But those are 2 ways. The dollars, the people who are responsible for the dollars, AKA getting reelected based on spending your tax dollars the right way and having to report back that it became an extended COLA, or the managers. Those were 2 groups of people that could have probably completely derailed this program. Yeah.
Interesting. So it's such a different world. I love this. This is so interesting.
It's really different. Okay, I want to talk about this culture of silence you mentioned in the prep. You said you inherited a culture of silence. What did that look like every day for like the employees and the managers?
Yeah, I know I referenced it earlier. So what we did, if our goal was to drive growth and development and find top talent, our solution wasn't necessarily in hanging on an annual performance review. It was get communication going. So we required by law a quarterly written check-in for every employee in the state. So we went from 16% of our employees having an annual review, by the way, in an audit run by the legislative body, to 89% of our employees acknowledged having 4 quarterly check-ins the first year of the program. So now I'm saying, wow, we had 80,000 quarterly check-ins. The back and forth is going. Now, I can only give the quantitative. We're delving into how much deeper. But what we inherited was, of course, 60% annual reviews. When I always said the culture of silence, it wasn't quiet because people were happy. It was a culture of silence because people were looking around protecting their own best interests. In my first 2 days of government, I had tenured employees tell me that my goal as the head of HR should not be seen or heard, and to as much as possible, when I was asked about legislation, find a way to be neutral. So 70% of our employees were unknown in quantity, right? They were labeled as unknown. I could not tell you if they were good, bad, ugly. When you're being coached to stay quiet and an unknown quantity, you're not a team. You're just like a collection of people waiting until 5 p.m. Managers didn't know how to give hard feedback. I couldn't assess whether it was skill or will. I had no idea because it was just a big black box. And last thought here, I wrestle with Governor with this. Because when I come up with innovative private sector ideas, he reminds me that government's built for consensus. Government's built to go slow on purpose. And I say, look, that's not congruent with agility and going fast. And when I go sit at the conferences and I hear Stacia tell me the top 5 megatrends, I can't compute. I'm not smart enough as a human to put that together. So I have to do some wrestling to figure out what that correlates to. Now, we've been given permission. And of course, I don't want to beat up public sector too bad. There are people that really want to try, but the system is set up to be silent, complacent, and just earn to the 5 o'clock. And there's pockets of people that want to get out of the tuna casserole smelling basement. They do. They don't know where to look sometimes.
Can I maybe inject a question here? I'm curious about your communication about this, right? So clearly most organizations don't have the law behind them for making changes like this, but I'm curious how you messaged it and how you communicated it to both the employees and the managers.
Yeah, the managers were the most unique part. The employees were being acted upon. No matter what I said, however I got out there in 2021, 2022, they're getting acted upon. You're forcing us to do this. It's now law. The managers, however, and we did these roadshow town halls. I went to 10 different locations and I put myself in front of it because I can explain it clearly. I had no idea. I got eviscerated. I had, law enforcement, I got D-. I remember being with I was with the state troopers, the leadership team for the state troopers. The commissioner invited me to come in and give let's do it based on the how, which is how we tried to land the messaging. It's not the what, it's the how. And they had been burned by performance management. Again, getting long-winded. About 6 years prior to all this, they tried to introduce pay for performance where they said, okay, every trooper, if you give away 10 speeding tickets this week, you get a $50 bonus. If you give away 20, you get a $100 bonus. And they had set aside $3 million. They were out of money in 6 weeks because the behavior, they did it with employment specialists as well. If you deny the unemployment, these are all public audit, right? You get a bonus, and they just ran out of money. So they were incentivizing the wrong thing. So my messaging was the how. And I'm teaching troopers who, by the way, make their money off of punitive authority, enforcing law, demanding that you don't be a bad person. And I'm teaching them, let's talk about approachability and resilience in the workforce. It was the most unlistened to TED talk that you could ever possibly give. I was terrible. I deserved to lose my job 6 times over that first year, but we used the strategic plans. We rolled out a stronger how. We did things called the GRIT initiative, government reform, cost savings initiatives, which said, get good enough at your trade or your job to make a recommendation to make it better. So now we're rewarding recommendations, right? So we attached it back to something that they were used to doing, and everyone's willing to gripe and tell you that I know how to make my job better. No one freaking asks me though. Well, we wouldn't ask them. And so once we started leveraging that, we started winning in performance management. And they started the cynicism of government, which is at an all-time high. I'm government no matter what way. I'm not an employer, I'm government. When I show up in a room, I'm government. So I think I answered your question. Otherwise, I just danced around it and I'll let you know.
No, you did a great job.
If you're a senior people leader, you know the hard part isn't finding ideas. It's deciding which ones are worth acting on. That's why Red Thread created Summit 2026. It's not a conference. It's a small, invitation-only working retreat. On June 23rd, senior HR leaders will gather in Snowbird, Utah for 3 days of guided, peer-driven work grounded in research. No keynotes, no vendor pitches, no passive audiences. Leaders will leave having strengthened people strategies they've been grappling with for years, with clearer direction on what to change, what to stop, and what to double down on. If you want to be part of that conversation, learn more and request an invitation over at redthreadresearch.com.
I want to talk a little bit about fairness, right? Because as you said earlier, some people walk in and they're like, I want to change the world through government. Some people are just counting the minutes to 5. For those who want to change the world through government, I imagine that this, kind of unknown category, like, everybody passes except for 3 people who failed in the last bajillion years. That's pretty galling for them. And so but I get your point about consensus, right? So as you're trying to balance, we need to create more fairness, we need to create better measurement and understanding, but not do it in a way that we ruffle so many feathers that everybody's super angry. How did you think about that balance?
So I guess the quote, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't, so you might as well be darned for doing, became really relevant there. Because I think, Stacia, you even led this with there's decline in trust in performance management. Does your research, and maybe I can bounce back to a question for you, what's more trusted, an absence of a performance system or a poor performance system? And I don't know if I'm going to get the right answer here, but there wasn't one. So
I don't have data on it, but my gut is the existence of a poor performance system is more trusted because we fill vacuums with our minds.
Employees don't want feedback. They want to feel connected. They don't want evaluation. They want attention. So respectfully, in an organization that didn't have one, the second largest workforce in Utah, we set up a framework with expectations and opportunities for conversation and attention to happen. That's it. Then, of course, we required it with law. And then luckily, I was able to convince people to give us $40 million to back it with incentives. But there was an absence, right? The unknown. So I don't have the strongest answer for you other than my team. We put a C- performance management system in place in 2021. I'll tell you, it's probably closer to B+ now in 2024. And now we're leveraging, new technology. We rolled out a new HCM 2 weeks ago. So we got better categorically every year. We've been progressing, but the fairness was the other option is nothing. It's kind of a punt on maybe some real data that you want to get to in there, but we had enough people telling us that they were interested in growth. It was one of the top 2 reasons prior to 2021 that our workforce was exiting. 41% of us made it their top 2 reasons, lack of professional development. Public sector was losing because we weren't developing. I had a LOD team 4 people big, and now I have an LOD team 12 people big. So I spent $1.2 million on a payroll to invest in developing. And employees view that as fair now. Now, you want to get to the fairness about a rating versus a 3 versus a 4. Our calibration is still pretty messy. I told you the first year, 88% of the people got funds. 47% of our workforce was considered high performing. Now, any bell curve, you're hold on, that's not right. We're down to 31%. 4 years in, I now have taught calibration so tightly that 1 in 3. I still think that's high, but we've definitely gotten better at how we calibrate, and we're not getting sued. The civil service protections aren't hitting us upside the head with the fairness and equity. So I don't have strong answers other than an absence of a system. We introduced one, and employees are okay with it.
So we talked a little bit about the communication with respect to your managers and how you were getting them on board, but I'm really curious about how you prepared them to actually have some of these tougher conversations.
Yeah, this was interesting internal struggles. I served 21, you'd know them as business units, right? 21 agency leaders, commissioners of tax commission, workforce services. And again, when the organization is established, government exists typically for compliance. Like if you think there are regulatory organizations, right? So bop you on the head for regulation. The compliance was really big. We had to unhook that and make it more what I call a connection check. And we're back to those quarterly check-ins. What's a connection check? And again, the easiest way to describe this is from a quantitative perspective. The same audit that I've been quoting, in 2021, only 30% of our managers acknowledged any version of training. We're going to leave it right there. I'm not going to define it for you. We're going to leave it as loose as possible. Up for your interpretation. Only 30% of our managers in 2021 had received any version of training. We traded in, I will give you a performance management program so you can hold people accountable, which wasn't the reason we were doing it. If you give us permission for your managers to step out and be trained. So we then exchanged and said, we're going to focus on employees' development. Very intentionally. That was the trade in the conversation with our CFOs. You give me some money, I'll train your people. So now we haven't had a year of less than 87% of our managers being trained. Now, I can tell you what they're trained on. We took apart the 19 ways Governor Cox sees the world. They're his best one-liners that he's given. He gives them to every new hire in his cabinet, and we onboard to it. We teach on those values. Social agility, resilience, collaboration with financial stewards. We saw a 16 times increase in the amount of people trained. My team, I told you earlier, we almost doubled the size of our team, our learning and organizational development team. They last year did 124 different live trainings. We are in their face. And by the way, this isn't us requiring it. We had 16,000 unique employees show up, and over half of them took over 3 different classes. So like they are telling us they want to be developed. They're telling us they're voting with their feet. They're showing up to live trainings or virtual trainings. So again, you asked how. I just said we put more resource in front of them. Yeah, my team's getting trained in Crucial, like all the things that you study, right? They've been to Harvard for the weekend, right? Like the leadership team is really developing the curriculum that public employees typically didn't think they have access to, and we're giving them access, and they're eating it up. They're eating it up.
Can I ask a question about maybe why they're so interested in development? And I know like it's a fundamental intrinsic need to develop, but are there other incentives that you're offering for that development, or is it just the intrinsic desire?
I'll take a stab at my assumption.
Okay.
You and I could probably have a dialogue where you think that public sector employees stay longer in their roles than private sector. You likely believe that.
I did until you just said that, yes.
We have incentive structures that get us there. We have, respectfully, one of the best retirements in the state of Utah. We just doubled down, by the way. My big request was additional 401k match for my employees. We were able to acquire it. So even better retirement. I think I'm kind of zigging, and employees are telling me that's where they want to zig, where everyone else is zagging. Like, okay, run towards the gig economy. How do you embrace that? Let's break healthcare. Let's have a future conversation about, right? Like, let's go in that space. We are going back to, cool, how do I elongate retention by 8 extra months? How do I elongate it by 14 months? How do I get you to so I have a correction officer at the age of 19 that I want to promote into another public sector job at the age of 23. How do I get there? So I tie the retirement together. I literally sit down and have career mapping with them, which again, could sound dated, but we have a talent mobility team on track right now that is delivering that. So here are the skills that you need. You need to go have a crucial conversations. If you want to be a manager, that's the next step, right? And so I think I started at Procter & Gamble. I didn't say that in my intro. Procter & Gamble in 2006 was like, hey, I want you to serve in feminine products, and then I want you to go over to diapers, and then I need you to spend time in Costa Rica, right? Like a development program, which by the way, they've all died because they were really expensive, or maybe not. Sage was like, no, I don't think that. Maybe I haven't researched them.
No. I just think it's sad that they've died. That's what that face was. I think you're right.
I'm running back to it. I have the second largest workforce. I have 1,200 positions that are financial manager. Well, you can be the financial manager for health and human services, and then you can also progress to be the finance director over corrections. So like I have such a place for us to play, and no one told public sector that. No one told them they think they have to make a career, stay an HR business partner. Oh, they can never go be an audit specialist at the legislature. By the way, it's the same retirement system. So you're not giving up the incentive structure that we elongate. And now I'm giving you the ability to grow in this space. We're about to wall off the private sector and say, we're good. We got everybody we need, and let's go. Let's perfect them. Let's retain them. Let's grow them. Now, of course, I'm being silly. But I want to, once you're a public sector steward, you typically want to stick around So why don't we just make it more apt for them to do so? I think that's a really big why. They're like, man, I don't want to leave and go over there. I wish there were some training opportunities or I could work on my social capital. Like, cool, let's give it to them.
You've got your own little microcosm there. Yeah, it totally did. I think you have some unique things because you own the entire system that most organizations don't, right?
Yeah, we're very lucky. I can create a talent mobility program that isn't just one organization. It can be cool. What's over the tax commission? Cool. What's over in highway patrol? Did you ever think about what the highway patrol can do for you? A forester at DNR can move over to DEQ, environmental quality. Like, I know there's some easy correlations, but employment specialist, you progress through employment specialist, suddenly you're driving economic development out of the office of GOEO. Like, we're putting like skills together and figuring out what lateral and horizontal and diagonal moves could look like. It's a pretty fun playground. Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting is maybe some of the zags you're making in many ways just reflective of your actual employee base as opposed to chasing the latest HR trend.
I agree.
And so I think Danny and I talk a lot about how a strategy is as much what you choose not to do as it's what you choose to do. And you have to have an intentional, coherent approach to all those things. I think you're a good example of that.
Yeah, that's really fair.
Okay, I think from a timing perspective, it would be great for us to do a little lightning round.
Okay.
What do y'all think? We up for it?
Yes.
All right, Danny.
Okay, first question, John. 3 things that make you happy.
All right. My 3-year-old son's growing up with an English parent and a British, American and British parent. So I love his attempts to say words with both accents, or just the fact that, like, is that the trash bin or the rubbish bin? When we are like, is it fries, chips, or crisps? And he has no idea. He has no idea. It's the most adorable thing ever. And he's got the cutest little British accent. My wife does a great job with it. So that's great. It makes me so happy every day. Anyway. 2, I honestly love being a host. And I think you guys got a smidge of taste of that when you guys came to Utah.
We did.
We just wanted to carry you. And it is just an intrinsic thing. I love showing off Utah or having people over for dinner, just genuinely elevating people's experience. It's just great, which I think the third will probably get into. I love having every vacation I've ever planned in a spreadsheet that then turns into a trifold that shows when the scheduled nap time is, travel time, fun time. Like, I have to overplan sometimes to the 15 minutes. It's the only way to have fun. Something that makes me really happy is a really coordinated vacation.
I love that. I might want that trifold because we only have one child, but we still haven't figured it out. So please send it my way.
Too type A. My wife hates it, but yeah. Nap times from 1 to 3 for me. No, not for the kids. That's for me.
You guys do whatever you want.
Yeah. I will say you got to video your son with that British accent because once he encounters American schools,
it's all over.
It's probably all over. Okay. Second question. What are the top 3 items on your bucket list?
Yeah, we'll go quick. I need to attend the Masters golf tournament. I have to. I love it. 2, I don't think I'll have the courage to pull it off because the logistical nightmare would be, but I really want to wake up Christmas morning snowed in like the most picturesque cabin. Like Christmas tree set up, all the presents. Think of all the things you'd have to do to make that happen. Like all the moving parts. And I know I'm 5 minutes from Little Cottonwood, so I could probably make it happen. Like, it'd just be so fun to wake up like in the best cabin. I guess maybe I just need to move into a cabin for a year. That's probably the best. 3rd, I'm still pretty convinced I could be a backup dancer on Justin Timberlake's next tour. And like, that's bucket list for me.
I am feeling, so who did we talk to who was at Summit that offered to do karaoke with us? I'm feeling a karaoke backup dancer kind of energy coming into this year's Summit.
If you get Justin Timberlake at your Summit, I will commit.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Oh, yeah, we'll work on that.
Okay. Final question.
Yeah.
What movie has the best soundtrack?
Yeah, it's not up for a debate. I'm going to let you or the chat try to guess. So the movie came out in 1995. I believe the soundtrack includes the best Disney song ever written. So,
1995.
The fictional pop star in this movie is Powerline. The actual singer for the Powerline actor is Tevin Campbell.
I don't know who this is, what it is.
The soundtrack of the best movie ever is the Goofy movie.
I never saw it.
Unequivocally, I will. Do yourself a favor. Hang up right now. The best 72 minutes of your life. It is awe-inspiring. It's wonderful. Eye to eye. Yeah, the Goofy movie.
That is very unexpected. I would not have expected that.
I was going somewhere like down the Little Mermaid sort of I was like, wait, I think it was before then, not 95.
It's Goofy movie. Maximilian Goof. Yeah.
All right.
When you watch it.
We can tell you have a 3-year-old. Okay, John, moving on from Goofy. Let's talk about what you actually did in this transformation, kind of steps 1, 2, 3, 4 to whatever.
Sure. A couple won't be relevant to some of this audience, but the first thing was we gained financial buy-in. I think I've alluded to it. We went and ran a bill. It's called House Bill 104. It was in Utah's legislative session in 2022. In that bill, we specifically said, we are going to require, so we're running law now, the heaviest form of government, quarterly check-ins, written quarterly check-ins, an annual review. In exchange, we will require all 3,800 managers to be trained annually. And we left it that vague. Once we got permission, because I needed $1.2 million a new payroll to help make that happen, I had to go hire my people, stand it up. We also had to secure $40 million to actually for the incentive structure. We then took a year. We set the law to start in 2023. In our calendar, our fiscal ends June 30th. So June 30, 2023. We then required all 3,800 managers to get trained. We started standing up live in person, right on the other side of COVID, 4-hour training sessions that developed what we thought were the most important things. And they were exactly what you think they are. How to have difficult conversations, how to progress performance improvement plans. We saw our performance improvement plans the first year have a 700% spike. PIPs went up 700% the first year.
Dang!
The fun thing is the terminations didn't, which meant we were having harder conversations, graduating more people. Now, again, I lean into the overall view of it, but I've heard plenty of anecdotes of people coming out of that space and succeeding and being success. So actually require the training. And then the fourth thing we did was we set up a system to receive everyone's quarterly reviews. We did it internally. We didn't have an HCM at the time. We do now. And then also how we allocated the funds back. We typically tried to say 35% of the population gets 65% of the funds. So we started calibrating tightly. And there were people getting in government $12,000 bonuses, which was unheard of. So we really broke the system. Now we've smoothed that a little, but yeah, those would be the things I would say that we spent the most time on.
You did this by hand? You didn't have an HCM, so Well,
I have a tech stack. So we built the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
We build or buy. We built that year. We've bought now.
Got it.
So talk to us then a little, you mentioned performance check-ins, but talk to us a little bit about what the roles of goals in this.
Yeah. We alluded to strategic plans. We tried to do the 50-50 split where any goal that you have should attach to the strategic plan. That's the what. And then 50% of your goals should be a how. How are you becoming a better human that serves Utah citizens? Hard stop. So was it resilience, right? Was it managerial courage? Was it formulate what succession planning looks like? We actually required a how, and how was really hard. Like I said, in punitive authority, imagine going to the correctional facility where they get paid to literally tell people to not cross the line and now tell them, how do you manage differently? And by the way, we have an intelligent workforce. They're a good workforce, but they've never been given permission to think about, I can be rewarded for the how. Like, imagine being a monopoly and never having to worry about customer service. That's what state government is. Who am I competing with to collect your taxes? So I don't care how good I do it or efficiently I do it. I mean, I care, right? But the customer service version, so we started teaching outside in customer service and people started presenting goals on customer service. The how became pretty important. Seems pretty, like you've heard that standard before. Align a goal to strategic plan, align a goal to become a better employee. The shoulder shrug, it was really hard to do. And we still don't get the how right every day, for sure. And some of the goals haven't been calibrated appropriately, but we're getting there. We're 4 years in. I think we're B+ right now. We're getting really close to world class.
Was there a point in all of this, John, where you're like, shoot, what if this doesn't work?
Yeah.
Are you still having that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the leave out of the calibration, right? So really scared me. It really scared me. 88% of our employees received funds the first year, and 47% of our population received the highest performance rating possible. 1 in every 2 employees was a high performer, and 88% of our people got money. I was worried because we were trying to reduce poor performance drag and find hypos. So that was 3 years ago. We have reduced poor performance drag. I gave you a little bit. Our exits for cause have not increased over the 4 years this program's been in place. However, we've seen about a 40% increase in first-year exits for cause, meaning we've pulled performance conversations together quicker. We know in 9 months what we usually took us 5 years to know, and we're exiting the employees that shouldn't be part of our organization more quickly, reducing poor performance drag. So I see enough data points like, no, we're doing this the right way. I mean, I've been asked to go testify with the federal government, but I'm terrified for getting lit up in front of like some of those senators. Maybe I'll gain the courage on the other side of it. But people are looking at us. Harvard's studying us. London School of Economics studying us. The federal government is interested. We've done something right. I think we probably need one more year to iterate before I can really thump my chest, but we're getting really close.
So can I ask a question about that? Because your boss is, I think he's at the end of his tenure, yeah?
He has 3 years left. He's not rerunning.
So what happens? What happens with all this good that you've done at the end of that tenure?
What happens with the new CEO of Coke yesterday? Like, they make new decisions. But I think that you can walk political lines, but you can't argue that good government, that everybody wants good government. And I think I have the unions, the fraternal orders, I have them all aligned that this is good because the data doesn't show that we just wanted to fire people, that we wanted accountability. I think if you went and surveyed our employees, we do serve our employees, they would tell you that where this has landed has been good for the state. Hard stop. So I think it's going to stay. And I think it'll become a model across public sector.
To push back a tiny bit on that, the new CEO of Coke has worked at Coke for 30 years. And so it presumably is bought into the system. But that being said,
the one thing I read this morning, a new Coke CEO, and okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Oh, we can't do this without picking a little bit, John. Okay, I want to make sure we talk just for a moment about your outcomes. You've kind of thrown some things down around, but as you look at the achievement that you've had across the last 4 years in doing this, what are the outcomes you point to and you're like, this is how we know this is working? Yeah.
My favorite one is we started a hypo program. Now I know we've perverted hypos with our poor calibration, but last year we graduated 120 managers from a governor's brand of leadership program. He teaches the program. He's teaching tomorrow. So we have 120 leaders graduating from that last year and this year. So I have 240, roughly 4% of my manager population bought in to what we're doing. Now, of course, Danny, back to what happens when the governor leaves. Like it was the governor's branded, but we have something special in that space. And which then, of course, leads to succession plan and talent mobility. Like I know I'm perverting some of those definitions, but like we've been able to unlock the next steps of talent sustainability because we have a rudimentary talent performance management system. And that's the thing that makes me most excited. I think some of the data I sent over, candidates for promotions who have a high performance rating are 7 times more likely to get promoted in the state. We have a retention rate of our high performers 16% higher than the rest of the population. So we're retaining our high performers at a higher clip, which is awesome. And there's another one baked in there somewhere. I don't think I have it, but yeah, all signs point to our high performers are thriving and our high performers are promoting and they're staying longer. That's right. Our retention is, I already said that, but we've stumbled into deliberately the right outcomes. And I'm really proud of it. It's a really fun landing spot.
I don't think that was just a stumbling in. I mean, with all the design points that you've made, I think that was an intentional design and it sounds like it's working.
Yeah. Thank you.
So to wrap, John, we always ask the same question to everybody that's on our podcast. And that question is, why do you do the work that you do?
Yeah, it's simple. I find a lot of joy in it. There's a lot of joy to unpack in the intersection of human capability and organizational productivity. And it's just really joyful work. That's how easy this is.
Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening. If this podcast got you thinking differently about how work happens, that's what we're here for.
We dig into these topics every week in our research and in the Red Thread community. The Red Thread community is a place where people, leaders, and practitioners come together to compare notes, share what's working, and maybe challenge those things that aren't working so well. You can join for free at redthreadresearch.com/membership. Or if you or your organization are ready to go deeper, take a look at our professional and our enterprise memberships. For professional tier, for listeners, you can use the promotional code STORIES, STORIES, for a 10% discount. And if you're a tech provider trying to make sense of this space, our tech consortium is where smart vendors are coming together to learn from each other and from the market. You'll find everything at redthreadresearch.com. I'm Danny Johnson. Thanks for listening and for caring about making work better.
Okay, that's a wrap for this episode of Workplace Stories. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our podcast so that you can be the first to know about future episodes. For exclusive access to our research, insights, and a vibrant network of human capital leaders, consider joining the Red Thread Research community. Visit redthreadresearch.com to learn more and to take your workplace to the next level.